All right, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started today. My name is Katie Dawson, and I'm the Assistant Vice President for Academic Innovation and Learning at the UL System, which basically means that half of my job, I get the privilege of working with the Compete Louisiana team and helping to re-enroll adults with some college, no degree. And the other half is getting to work with the content experts and some of our university representatives to put on system-wide programming. So thank you for joining us at our very first Money Matters, a UL System Financial Wellness Series webinar. I'm going to turn over control to Dr. Brian Bolton, our content expert for financial literacy, and we'll get started.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you and your team for coordinating and organizing all of this. This is a new project, a new venture, and excited to see kind of how it goes over the summer. Alex, as currently the only guest, you can decide kind of what we do. Here we go. Allison's joining. I have a presentation prepared. I can make this a very kind of one-way webinar style presentation, or we can turn this into a cozy consulting town hall Q&A where, I mean, you're here, maybe you're here for a reason, or maybe you're just here because you have an hour free on Wednesday. But if you have specific questions.
I don't have specific questions, but I don't know if you want to keep to a presentation style, so someone later who wants to watch it, they'd be able to kind of see what the presentation, if they couldn't come at this time. Yeah,
I mean, that's great. We'll do both. Alex, Allison, if you can hear me, welcome. I'm Brian Bolton.
Hi, I can hear you. Hey,
great.
Brian.
Hi, we can hear you. So yeah, I'll go through the presentation, webinar style, but recognize that we have a cozy audience and the time is yours. So please feel free to ask questions, interrupt anytime. Also feel free to just kind of sit back and watch it like a movie and enjoy the show. This is session 1, part of our Bridging the Divide summer series. It's the summer series, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie. We've got 5 or 6 topics spread across different content experts, not just finance. I will have 6 sessions, and then we'll also have mental health, teaching, online teaching, virtual grant writing, and a variety of others. So plenty of opportunities to engage and learn. But our focus today is on investing. And as you'll see, kind of as I go through the first 5 or 10 slides, to me, investing happens after we have goals, after we analyze habits, and after we develop strategies. Investing by itself, the act of investing, of choosing what to do with our money, what to do with our savings, we can only have those choices or make those choices or execute those strategies after we've done preliminary work. And that preliminary work maybe starts with savings and certainly starts with looking in the mirror and thinking about what do we want to achieve. Those are the goals. The habits part, we're all different. We all have different experiences, different lived experiences, different situations. And our habits, you could connect habits to values, priorities, preferences. Our habits are unique to us. Personal finance is very personal, in part because of our experiences and our habits. And so our goals will be personal, and then our strategies will be personal. And so I'm going to present some kind of generic frameworks for thinking about goals, habits, and strategies that will hopefully tee you up or give you the opportunity to focus on your specific situation. Again, throughout this presentation, if you want to ask specific questions about yourself, you're welcome to. If you want to follow up with me directly, my email address is brian.bolton@louisiana.edu. I am a professor of finance at UL Lafayette. I've set up a kind of just library of personal finance resources on our webpage, the College of Business webpage, business.louisiana.edu/financespersonal. There are books there. I've created 3 books, workbooks, personal finance workbooks for different audiences, undergrads, grads, and entrepreneurs. Slightly different focuses for each audience. There's a bunch of presentations like this, and then some links to other websites, economic forecasts, and different personal finance related information resources on that site. So that site is updated as my work evolves. You can always email me. Personal finance is personal. We don't always like asking personal questions in group settings. You're welcome to ask personal questions to me directly, and we can set up a one-on-one Zoom, talk about very specific questions you may have. This is session 1 in a 6-session series. We'll get to budgeting. Today we'll do goals, habits, and strategies. As I said, it's hard to execute investing goals until you have money saved up to do that. And that money, the saving for most of us, comes from budgeting and debt management, income and debt management. So we'll focus on that in 2 weeks, right after July 4th. We're going to take next week off, and then we'll get back to it on July 6th. Then we'll get into real specific investing. I'd say it's, investing for retirement, education, and special events. That's where we'll really get into the investing class, how to, specific strategies, how to build a portfolio, how to buy your first stock, bond. And then we'll kind of look at some specific strategies that will affect many of us or be appropriate for many of us. Then we'll get into specific issues for international faculty, students, and professionals. Unique opportunities and constraints, challenges sometimes for international faculty, students, and professionals. But it's important to highlight those so we know what can and can't do. Tax planning affects all of us, right? And for budgeting, for investing, for retirement, there are unique approaches to tax planning. The more we plan our taxes, the more cash we end up with. And then finally, we'll end up with career planning, which affects most of us. We've done the career planning session with students, graduate students specifically, and I don't want to downplay the others, but the career planning is always the most engaging and the most exciting, certainly for grad students, because they're about to cross that bridge from student to professional. And so, having said that, the framework of each session, if we want, we can open with Q&A. If not, I'll roll into the specific topic. Start with some general information, high-level holistic information. Then we'll get to the specific topic, and then we'll open it up again. Even though we have these 6 topics scheduled, we can talk about budgeting this week. We can talk about taxes this week. We can talk about retirement this week. This is what I'm going to prepare. Feel free to direct me to what you're interested in, what your goals are at any time. So that's the structure. That's where we're going. Ultimately, what we're hoping to do with this series is some confluence of these issues. Finance, personal finance is some trade-off between short-term and long-term goals. We have family needs, we have financial needs, maybe there's professional needs, social community needs we also have. But ultimately, we're all trying to work towards some semblance of happiness or well-being or prosperity, however we define it. A cliche I've used frequently is money doesn't buy happiness, but money can open up opportunities, and then we can choose opportunities that lead to happiness. So I'm not trying to overstate the importance of money and financial management, but for most of us, it's critical to certain levels of well-being, prosperity, and leading to happiness. This is the holistic version. When we think about our jobs, our mission at the university, we're focused on student success. Maybe this starts in the classroom, but being a successful student has many more components. It has health, mental and physical, financial wellness, external issues such as the economy or COVID or international issues. Get to close to seeing the end of the tunnel, we start focusing on career planning. And throughout this, friends and family are a big component foundation for student success. Well, most of us probably aren't students. Most of us are professionals, faculty, and staff. And it looks a lot the same, right? What determines professional success for many of us, certainly in a university career, well, starts with our education and training, but then everything else is kind of the same. Our health, mental and physical, financial wellness, external issues, career planning, and then that foundation of friends and family. So even though my day job is working with students, and we do these series and sessions a lot with students and their personal financial planning, for professionals who are already in their careers and working directly on different goals, Many of the foundations and the drivers are the same. Many of the problems are more sophisticated. Many of the goals are more sophisticated, but the basic foundations are predominantly the same. If you think about financial planning, financial wellness as this kind of long, holistic process and a mindset, as much as a series of actions, it's a mindset. I like to try to inspire students and others with different quotes. A goal without a plan is just a dream. So you have to sit down and make that plan. Once we start acting, then it's just sticking to that plan and working through it. If we ignore tomorrow, it's not going to go away. It's just going to get more difficult. And so taking on this plan helps us execute and take control and ownership of tomorrow. And so that's my framework. That's my kind of mentality with all this financial planning. Yes, the specific investments we make or tactics we have and budgeting decisions we have are critical, but the mindset and how we approach it is just as important. And it's how we think about education, it's how we think about our careers, it's how we think about our family. And so let's apply this kind of taking ownership and being proactive in planning and executing our goals with our financial lives too. So when we talk about what is financial planning, it all starts with your values, dreams, and goals. We've got a number of people in this series, in this webinar. We all have different goals. We all have different dreams, different values. And those values, dreams, and goals dictate where we want to go. And in order to get where we're going, we have to first understand where we are today. What is our current situation? What is our education, career, family, and certainly financial situation? In order to get to what our goals are, we have to understand where we're starting, right? If you're trying to take a road trip, you have to know where you're starting and where you're ending before you can figure out the route you're going to take. And so understanding the goals, that's the destination, current situation is the starting point. The route is then the financial plan. And the financial plan for most of us, all of us, there's a base level foundation with investing, budgeting, debt management, and taxes. These are things that are pretty ubiquitous or apply to just about everyone. Kind of the second level, we'll get into insurance, retirement, and education planning, maybe for yourself, maybe for children. And then for some of us, maybe all of us, the kind of the higher level, longer term issues of what does the financial plan mean for my family? Do I have business interests? Are there philanthropic goals or activities that I want to engage in? And then longer term, how do I want to pass my financial plan, my assets onto family, friends, others in the long term? So these are the components, these are the execution. It all starts with understanding values, goals, and kind of where we're starting from. So a few opening morals. I mentioned some of these in the opening. Personal finance is personal. It's not about anyone else. It's just about you. You have to analyze your goals. You have to look in the mirror, understand your situation, and be willing to address that situation to help you get to your goals. There's also no judgment in personal finance. There's no ego, there's no shame. Again, we all have different lived experiences. We all have different choices we've made, good and bad, that have led us to where we are today. And then we also have different goals for where we want to get into the future. And if you start judging yourself or letting ego make your decisions, you're probably not going to achieve the goals you want. And so when we talk about these plans, we want to be open and honest with ourselves, but we also want to try to put aside any negative emotions or harmful emotions, behaviors that may derail us from our plans. And it's because it's personal, it's very difficult for me to give any specific advice to everyone. However, there's one piece of advice that I think I'm pretty safe in giving to just about everyone, and that's save. We'll talk about budgeting, debt management. The more you can save, the more you can look at your own behavior and find opportunities to save money. Save money in ways that's consistent with your goals, right? If you like going out with family and friends on the weekend, great. Spend that money, enjoy that time. You don't want to be frugal at the expense of your goals, but you also don't want to overpay for those goals. You want to save where you can and make compromises between the long and the short term and understand what can you give up today in order to achieve those longer term goals. And for most of us, it starts with saving. Once we have savings, then we can get to investing. Once you get to investing, then you have a feeling, a sense of ownership and a little bit more control over your future. And then however you define wealth, that wealth comes at the end of savings, investing, and ownership. Few of us, most of us, do not start with wealth, but it's part of this process of planning and execution over long term. And so it comes back to this holistic model of what are your goals, what are your values, what's your current situation? That's point A to point B, and then the personal financial plan is how we get from A to B. And for all of us, that plan is going to be unique and different. And so you have to be honest with yourself about what your goals are and what your current situation is. We talk about this kind of at the professional financial level, start with some strategies, then we'll execute some investment strategies. When we're executing investment strategies, again, we're all different. We have different risk tolerances. We're going through a period right now of high inflation in the economy that's affecting different people in different ways. And that comes back to a risk tolerance. When we're thinking about investments, if you're trying to save up for a vacation in 6 months or a wedding in 12 months, your time horizon is going to be different than someone who's looking to retire, focused on retiring in 30 or 40 years. And so your investments will be different. We have different risk tolerance, we have different time horizons, and that will dictate different types of investments. We can touch on this model in these relationships between risk, time, and the investments we make today. We'll spend more time in 2 to 3 weeks really going through kind of these connections. And again, because we work for universities and university system, this is very similar to what we did in school. It's very different. It's very similar to what we do for our students. You have goals, you execute strategy, you implement strategies, you identify time horizons, specialties, and then you monitor and modify. So we should be very comfortable with the financial planning because it's what we do in our careers, directly or indirectly. And as we're going through this, just another way to look at this plan: set goals, analyze reality. That's where we are today. Create the plan, execute, track progress, adjust plan, repeat, revise, enjoy. Our situations will change. The analyze reality part, that changes regularly, right? As I mentioned, we're in a high inflationary period. That's a different reality than most of us had 6 months ago. Maybe our goals have changed, but as a result, maybe our plan changes too. And so as we think about this model, it's never going to end, but the more control, the more proactive we are, the easier it gets to feel comfortable to sleep at night and to make sure that your financial situation is not a source of stress, but something of a source of empowerment and control for you. So on that opening, let's have a little quiz, and you can shout out answers, or you can be quiet or type in the chat. Whatever, we got 3 quiz questions, or maybe 5, just to kind of put things in perspective. We know the US stock markets are having a lousy first half of 2022, large part to inflation and expectations or concerns about a recession and where the economy is headed. But let's go back a year and a half. If you had invested $1,000 in the S&P 500, the S&P 500 is the Standard & Poor's 500, generally regarded by professors, investors as the benchmark for the market. You hear people talk about the market. The S&P 500 is the best representation of what the stock market or financial markets is. Go back 18 months, and if you had invested $1,000, what would that be worth today? There are 4 choices: 557, 755, 1,002, 2992. We got our chatters. C, B, yeah, good. The answer is C. And I did this yesterday. If I were to update it today, it might be 1,010. And so there's this sense in, you follow the financial markets, follow the mainstream media, or whatever we call it, that we're going through a really rocky period. And we are. The first 6 months of this year have been very bad, 20% down, but we had about a 30% increase last year. And this is how financial markets work, this trade-off between long-term and short-term. So if you invested 18 months ago, which is not that long ago, you'd be basically breaking even if you'd invested in the S&P 500. And so having this perspective hopefully is a little bit helpful. Let's look at a different version of this question. Let's go back not a year and a half, but 10.5 years. And now maybe the answer is a little more obvious. Same options. Go back 10.5 years and our $1,000 turns into close to $3,000. You do the math on that, and that's about 11% per year, 11% average return, 11% increase over those 10.5 years. In a little bit, we'll talk about compound interest, and compound interest means interest on interest or growth on growth. And when you have growth on growth over 10 years, you're getting 10 times growth on growth. And so this is exponential growth. $1,000 becomes $3,000. And for most of this would be passive income. So if you can do this with your savings, with a brokerage account, certainly with your retirement account, it's passive income that over a long term, at least certainly over the past 100 years, has demonstrated or proven to be relatively lucrative. Certainly 11% is much more than we could get at in a savings account at a bank or so on. So let's go from investing to debt. And if you borrow $10,000 for a student loan, average interest rate about 5%. It might have been too high for a year ago, it might be too low now, but it's probably ballpark. You plan on repaying the loan for 10 years. How much total interest do you pay over the life of the loan? $500, $1,723, $2,723, or $12,393. You'll see I haven't been very creative with my multiple choice questions. The answer is C, $2,723. So you borrow $10,000 and you repay over those 10 years a total of $12,723 or $2,723 in interest. And you have to decide, is that good or bad? And for most of us, certainly in our business, we think of that as pretty good debt. Relatively low interest rate, relatively low cost to get something, get an asset, a degree that hopefully changes our lives and sets us up for that well-being and prosperity we want. And added bonus is some of that student loan interest that we pay is tax deductible. So that rate, 5% goes down to about 4%, and maybe the net cost is closer to $2,000 of interest or so. So let's go from good debt to bad debt. And instead of student loan, we've got a fun vacation on our credit card, annual interest rate of 18.99%, which is about average these days, still repaying it over 10 years. And now we're paying over $12,000 of interest on a $10,000 vacation. A $10,000 vacation becomes a $22,000 cost, which sounds kind of silly to most of us, but then you've kind of fast forward, you break this down and think about, okay, what are our students or what are we spending on Friday night or Saturday night? What are we spending on shoes? What sort of impulse buying are we putting on our credit card that is going from $100 to $230? And if we can eliminate that and those impulses and decisions and behaviors, then maybe we have more opportunity to take control of our own money. Last question, it's a two-parter. Imagine that you're 25 years old, or just you're finishing up your 25th year, about to turn 26. You invest $100 a month, every month for 10 years, 25 to 35, and then you never invest again. So from 35 to 65, no new investments, but the money that you invested for those 10 years is still invested, still earning this 8% return. How much will you have accumulated when you retire at 65? I'm not going to ask you to do the math. I'll do the math for you. Your two options, 149 or 184. You can hold on your answers because I'll give you the part two of the question. And part two of the question is someone who maybe got a slower or later start. They don't invest from 25 to 35, but they invest for 30 years from 35 to 65, still earning 8%, still retiring at 65. What are their balances? I'll give you the same two options, and maybe you can kind of narrow down your choices if you are skilled at multiple choice exams. You're either going to get it right or you're going to get both wrong, probably. Well, maybe you're not. I don't know. Someone's investing for 10 years, someone else is investing for 30. The difference is the person who's investing for 10 years started 10 years earlier. And here's the surprising result. to many people is significantly more in assets at age 65 if we still start investing early. The 25 to 35 person has a lot more. Now, for many of us, we didn't start investing. We're over 25 and we didn't start investing. And what can we do? Well, the answer is it's never too late to start. And yes, person who started at 25 may have more accumulated. Many of us didn't have that option, circumstances didn't allow. What can we do? We can start investing now. So a few morals maybe come out of this. Nothing in finance is free. You generally have to sacrifice something to get something good. Every benefit has a cost. We know that in life, but at the same time, some people tend to think that investing or finance, there's free money. There's no free money. We can talk about Bitcoin today. I haven't planned on talking about Bitcoin. 6 months ago, one Bitcoin was worth 50,000. Today it's worth 20,000. It's a 60% loss. That's a cost. And in finance, much of the time, the cost is risk. The cost is uncertainty. But there's always a cost. Be mindful of short-term versus long-term trade-offs. Make sure you are making this short-term, long-term trade-off that you want. Is a short-term indulgence worth a long-term sacrifice? In the case of student loan debt, it probably is. In the case of a $10,000 luxury vacation or gourmet ramen or truffle ramen, maybe not. Maybe it is for you, right? Just connect this back to your goals and maybe that is the trade-off you want. Interest is your friend if you're receiving it, it's your enemy if you're paying it. So be very careful if you're paying it. Look for opportunities to receive it, whether through investing, saving, tax-deferred accounts we'll talk about in a few minutes, and look for ways to avoid it if you're paying it. Next week or the next session, we'll talk more about debt and talk about good debt and bad debt. We just looked at a couple examples. Interest really maybe isn't your enemy if you have student loan debt, but you're still paying it. It's still a cost. So it's a constraint, if not an enemy. And then, as we just saw in that third question, save and invest as early as you can. Look for opportunities, small savings today. You don't stress out about trying to make up for lost opportunities, but just take control of what you can do going forward. And small habits today can create enormous opportunities in the future. Again, debt can change your life both for better or worse. This is the definition of good debt versus bad debt. Make sure you don't let it control your life or destroy your life. The one piece of advice I give on debt, anytime you take out debt, whether it's student loan or credit card or whatever it may be, mortgage, have a plan for repaying it. And just having that plan helps you take control of it. If you take out debt and assume it'll take care of itself, that rarely happens in finance. So have a plan. And then above all, be thoughtful, strategic, and be patient. In finance, we tend to feel like things can happen very quickly, both good or bad, and that's rarely the case. If we're patient and strategic, we have a plan, we'll generally get to where we want, even though we may have to revise and modify a little bit here and there. Opening quiz, those are the morals. You may be sensing a theme in a lot of kind of my perspective. As I mentioned earlier, we're in kind of a unique situation right now. Inflation's at a 40-year high. It's at 8.5%, kind of depending on what metric you look at. Some metrics show it closer to 9.5%. Other metrics show it closer to 6%. I'm not giving investment advice. I'm not making a prediction. I think kind of my best case scenario is it's maybe at 5% 12 months from now, next summer. It could be as high as 12%. I think it's 12% 12 months from now. There's more significant systemic or structural problems. We may see it spike up to 12% in the next 3 months, but I expect it to kind of modify and moderate a little bit, certainly in the next 3 to 6 months. But it could be with us for a while. Most of us of different ages, for most of our lives, inflation has been very low. We've not had any type of elevated inflation for at least 15 years. And so when it spikes up from 1% and now up to 8 or 9%, it's this enormous shock. And the shock is real. We'll see how long-lived this shock is. But our frame of reference, our lived experience, this is unusual, and this is a challenge for many of us. And it's real. Interest rates have gone up as a result. right? The Federal Reserve and other government entities will try to force interest rates up in order to fight inflation. Fighting inflation means slowing down the economy. By slowing down the economy, inflation should slow down and maybe interest rates go up. But in the short term, and the short term could be 1, 2, 3 years, short term could be pretty long, right? 1, 2, 3 years. We will have higher borrowing costs for student loans, for credit cards, for mortgages. Mortgage rates have doubled in the past year virtually. And unfortunately for us as consumers, the slowest interest rates to adjust are savings accounts. They're slow because banks are cautious about making those increased commitments paying out to us, the depositors. But they should go up, but they're frequently the last to go up. And so we will be affected by higher interest rates before we get much benefit, many of us. The unique situation of the Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that is causing significant problems. It may continue to cause significant problems if the war continues into this winter and oil and energy supplies across Europe are compromised. It's causing turbulence. What does turbulence mean? It means uncertainty, significant disruption to supply chains, shocks, whether it's baby formula, whether it's oil. The global supply chain is so integrated that small issues can lead to kind of a domino effect on your life and my life. And so the Russian invasion of Ukraine is and will continue to have create challenges. From day to day, we may not feel like we're still in a COVID world, but it's not behind us. Much of China is locked down, and many of our goods that we rely on come from China. And for much of the past 3 months, China has been on a virtual lockdown where they can't leave their apartment. And so that has caused disruptions too. And that contributes to inflation, it contributes to outages. Education uncertainty, I mentioned that about, if in this COVID world, we're all hoping for the best and that we can go back to normal for the foreseeable future. But what if there are shocks, right? What if there's an uptick? Do we go back to online? What do your high schoolers do? There's still uncertainty, I think. Maybe we're a year away from having less uncertainty. And then certainly travel, right? Many airlines are canceling flights ahead of July 4th because they don't have the pilots and staff to take care of those flights. But uncertainty, that turbulence, those bottlenecks, that affects everything. In an integrated system, even if you're not flying, it impacts what you may be paying either at the grocery store or the gas station. That's all bad news. Maybe the good news is the job market has been incredibly strong. I think it's going to continue to be relatively strong. We've seen some signs in the past month or two that may be weakening, but I think the weakening has been in select industries or select companies. Overall, the job market is still relatively high. Salaries for college graduates have been at all-time highs. I think this is going to continue. I think if inflation continues at 9% 12 months from now, maybe the job market slows down considerably, but it's been strong for a long period of time. Companies still need to hire. I think the job market will continue to be pretty strong. But again, there will be unexpected shocks, specific industries or specific companies. Tesla's laying off salaried employees, but hiring hourly workers. And we may see certain choices like that in different industries or different businesses. I think for the next 6 to 12 months, the job market will be pretty strong, certainly for our students, for our kids, and us if that's an issue. So good news and bad news, but certainly turbulent, certainly discomfort, certainly some challenges in the economic environment. What does this mean? It means plan ahead. Right? I can't control any of this stuff, but I can control my own situation a little bit. I can control the actions I'm taking, steps I'm taking to make any future shocks or uncertainty a little bit less painful. And maybe those steps are just with my attitude, right? Maybe it doesn't mean that I start door dashing. It just means that I take a different perspective on my financial planning so that I feel like I have more control and more perspective. And maybe my goals aren't 1 to 2 years out, but my goals are 4 to 5 years out or something. So you can take steps today to feel a little bit more control, then you'll probably weather this uncertainty better than you would otherwise. So with that, what are some steps you can take? So I call these simple challenges. They may not be that simple, or they may not be that challenging to some of you, but I'll go through these pretty quickly. And just, these slides will be posted on the UL System Moodle site. You can kind of refer back to some of the fine print on some of these, but just some challenges to get you thinking about taking control and weathering future turbulence a little bit better than maybe you otherwise could. For 1 or 2 months this year, track every penny you spend. And the reason to do this is really to look in the mirror. Maybe pick July, October, February. Pick 3 months, 1, 2, 3 months within a year. You track every penny. And the purpose is not to judge yourself or to get emotional or shame, but to understand, what are your habits? Are you spending money for emotional reasons? Are you spending money that you could otherwise be saving? And so by looking in the mirror and tracking every penny, and by every penny, I mean, do it a little bit old school, not necessarily with pen and paper, but maybe do it with Excel. If you plug everything into a software, they're going to spit out some answers in some numbers that you may just accept. Say, okay, that makes sense. We want to go one step further than just saying, okay, that makes sense. We want to really take ownership and really analyze our behavior. So, Katie, the question is the key to track months that are not consecutive? I think so. But also pick months. You don't want December, maybe because you're going to have purchasing. Maybe you don't want January also. For me, I don't get a paycheck in June and July. I don't get paychecks, I guess. And so my spending may be different. So maybe June's not a good month for me. But pick out a couple months during the year that you think you can really learn. And maybe August is bad because back to school for some people. So pick a month, 1 or 2 months where you can really learn about your behavior, about your trends and what may be guiding you. Again, nobody's going to judge you other than yourself. And so pick months or pick time periods that you can learn from. A couple more micro levels. Stop spending money after a certain time at night. This is what I give to students. And this sounds stupid in some ways, but kind of once I got my mind around this, I don't spend money after 8 p.m. Now, if I'm out with family or friends at a restaurant or a bar, I'll pay the bill, but I'm conscious of it. And I don't do online shopping after 8. If I need to take a flight, I'll wait till the next morning. But maybe the daily deadline doesn't give you any value. Maybe it's 1 day a week. You don't spend any money. Maybe it's, you explicitly, pick times where you notice your habits. You go back to challenge 1, you identify your habits. What behavior would you like to change? And so, for me, if I stop spending money after a certain period of time, and maybe one of our attendees, right, that you can take more control, and just to be a little more mindful, right? Doesn't mean you don't spend the money the next morning. Just being a little more mindful maybe gives you a little more control. A similar one for me, if I'm going to spend over $100, I wait 24 hours. Whatever it is, there's one exception. One exception is groceries. But shoes, plane ticket, whatever it may be, if I think this is just to get away from expensive impulse buying. And if I wait 24 hours, frequently that 24 hours becomes 72 or 48. Sometimes, if I have a good deal on a flight, maybe it's exactly 24 hours and I pull the trigger and buy the ticket. But just by having that kind of self-restraint allows me to take a little bit more control. Sometimes I see something I want to buy that are $150 maybe, and 24 hours later I've forgotten about it. And just by having that constraint, it makes me a little more mindful of some habits. Saving. As soon as you get each paycheck, pay yourself first. And I said explicitly save $25. Save whatever the number is for you. I use the $25 number frequently with students just to build that habit. Those of us with regular paychecks, maybe $25, maybe we can increase that amount. The goal, the purpose is to get in a habit. As soon as I get my paycheck, I'm paying myself first. And maybe you pay yourself across 2 or 3 different accounts, maybe to retirement, maybe to savings, maybe to debt reduction. Just getting in the habit of paying yourself first. I'll show you related challenge related to debt in a few slides, but just kind of trying to make it easy for yourself to save, easy for yourself to focus on your goals and to kind of move away from impulses or letting your money control you. We don't want saving, we don't want financial planning to be burdensome. We want it to have a purpose. And hopefully that purpose is to work towards certain goals, but maybe we want to have some fun along the way. I'm a finance professor, so maybe fun is something different to me, but reward yourself. If you set a goal to save and you achieve that goal, reward yourself. Couple different ways of doing it. If you set a goal of saving $50 and you save $150, treat yourself with the extra 100. I had a student in class last week, and she managed her money for her mom, and it has a version of this. Mom, I want you to save $100 this week. Anything mom saves over $100, mom gets to go to the casino with. And they've evolved, and mom loves that, right? That's mom's outlet. And when they first started, mom would take everything that she saved over $100 to the casino, and now she takes half. And it was just evolved into this game, but the game encourages the goal, and then you kind of adjust the behavior, modify the behavior to really focus on what your goals are. An alternative that I do frequently is I don't treat myself to a nice dinner or to a spa, but if I have large purchases, then I set aside an equivalent amount or half that amount for charity. Charity is one of my values. I have different small number of charities that I like to support. When I treat myself to something, I also want to use that as an incentive to connect to my other values of donating to causes that I care about. And so whatever the game is, however you're working on it, make it a game, whatever that means to you. Next week, or in 2 weeks, we'll talk about debt management. One of the most important numbers in debt management is your credit score. And the credit score, for the most part, comes from a credit report. You can get a free credit report from TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian. Make sure what's on the credit report belongs to you. Make sure you understand what's on there, and then see or think about how that directly impacts your credit score. You don't know, the credit score formula is incredibly complicated. It's not always obvious what to change, but certainly if you can look at your credit report and understand what's yours, what's not yours, can be helpful. Personal story, my parents opened a credit card for themselves when I was 2. I have the same name as my dad, and that credit card has been on my credit report for nearly my entire life. Fortunately, mom and dad are paying that credit, and I've tried to fight it and they won't remove it. But fortunately, mom and dad are paying on that credit card, and it's helpful. But if they weren't paying, then I'd probably fight it a little bit harder. As we're seeing about credit scores, we'll think about this again in a couple of weeks. It's very difficult for you to hack or bump your credit score in the short term. One hack that might improve it is to request a higher limit on your credit cards. You have credit cards, you have a $1,000 limit, ask them to increase it to $2,000. Don't use the extra limit or the extra credit. Just increase the number and maintain your same behavior, and the credit score will see the credit score will think that you're using less of your credit. In fact, you are using less available credit, but you're not spending anymore. You just got a higher credit limit. And it's one of the few short-term hacks that can improve your credit score. All right, I've got 15, we're halfway through. Once a year, twice a year, check out your insurance expenses. It's easy to compare quotes, whatever insurance policies you have, compare pricing. The benefit of this is, as we go through life, our insurance needs change. You get married, you have children, buy a house, your insurance needs change. And so by staying on top of insurance expenses, you can have the policies that are most appropriate. But even if your needs don't change, you can make sure you're getting the best prices. For most of us, the company, the underwriter doesn't matter a whole lot. Probably mattered more 30 or 40 years ago, less so now. And so switching may be relatively costless, and you can save some cash. Number 8, if you're expecting a tax refund this year, get rid of it. And this may be a hack that is especially helpful in a high inflation period. Higher inflation, our prices are going up, most of our incomes are not going up as quickly. is there some short-term way that we can increase our income? And a tax refund, getting rid of a tax refund can effectively increase our income. And there's this asterisk on that is, if we get a tax refund, it doesn't change the total amount that we receive, it just changes the timing. So would you rather have $1,000 a month for 12 months or $800 a month plus the $2,400 refund? And it's the same dollar amount that we're getting, it's just with the tax refund, we're getting it later. And so if you get rid of the tax refund, you change your withholding, so you're getting a higher, cash flow with each paycheck, and you're comfortable having no refund, I'd encourage you to do that. The alternative to that is some people, when they get their refund, they do really good things with it. They pay off debt, they put it to a specific savings account. If that's you and you are really good at using your tax refund, then maybe don't get rid of it. But certainly in a high inflation period, this may be one hack that will help you get cash relatively sooner, get your own money. It doesn't increase the total amount you receive, it just accelerates what you're getting. Past 5 years, there's been kind of a subscription creep. Many things in our lives are becoming more and more based on subscriptions. Companies love this because they book the revenue and they think they have this consistent stream. Try to cancel at least one this year, or to downgrade, go from platinum to gold or silver or whatever. Analyze your behavior, analyze your needs, and change the accounts as you can. And or at least, the benefit of this is analyzing what you have and thinking, do I need these? And if you can get rid of one subscription or more without sacrificing benefits, well-being, and your goals, that can be an easy hack to free up some money. This one may be very difficult. 1 month a year, maybe it's a week, don't eat out. Whether it's fast food, whether it's a night, whether it's happy hour, try to go a month. Maybe you start with a week. Maybe some people have to start with a day where you don't eat out. If you go out for social reasons, try to just eat and drink before going out and just enjoy your company. Remember, there's no shame, there's no ego in financial planning. If you're going out for the food, okay. But if you're going out for the company, maybe you can enjoy that and still save $20 or $30. Really cool when a student gave me 1 month a year, empty out your pantry, empty your freezer. Set aside, and the student did it every January. Family, she has 4 kids, and they make it a game. Every January, they try to avoid going to the grocery store, only buying perishables. And they empty the pantry, empty the freezer, and with a family of 4 kids, they would have this kind of pantry creep where they buy and don't eat. And once a month, they would say, okay, we're emptying the pantry, emptying the freezer, and saved, in her case, several $100s a month, or for that month. It was a one-time shock. So that's a cool one that most of us probably can do, and probably help many of us, and hopefully avoid throwing away food. A longer-term one we'll talk more about in our investing for retirement and education. Open an IRA or Roth IRA. IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. This is a trick or a tool the IRS provides to help us take a little bit more control of our retirement. There's subtle differences in tax payments between the IRA and Roth. I'm happy to talk to you about the differences. An alternative to this for most of us, if we're UL system employees, we may have access to the Louisiana Deferred Compensation Plan. That's essentially the same as a traditional IRA. Take out pre-tax dollars out of our paycheck, allocate it directly to a retirement plan, and then we can touch it when we turn 59 and a half, and it grows and we choose the investments. And it allows us to put way more money in if we have the means. The difference is it's managed by a brokerage, and we may have limited investment options, but even within those programs, you're generally gonna have a lot of investment options. So with the open IRA, you go to a Merrill Lynch or a Charles Schwab, you're gonna have thousands of options. With the Louisiana Deferred Compensation Plan, you may have 2 or 3 dozen options, which is probably more than enough for most of us. So talk to your HR. You can do this electronically now, I think, or you can talk to HR. If you are willing to commit to retirement saving, this can be an easy and effective way of doing it. If you have children, whether they're 17 or 7 months, set up a 529 college savings plan. If you think that they're going to go to college, the IRS has lots of tax preferred investment plans, from a 403B for retirement to IRAs, to tax deductibility of student loan interest. I might argue that the 529 college saving is the best of all. It has the best benefits, the most tax preferential treatment, and it provides enormous tax benefits, whether you end up saving $100 in the plan or $100,000 in the plan for your children. Enormous flexibility, few constraints, but enormous flexibility and options. This is one of the keys. Yeah, go ahead.
That's one of the things that we just had a daughter, is the college savings, that I'm never quite sure as we start saving towards that, and especially as a university employee, about how much, if I know I'm going to be in the university system, and how much to really dedicate towards that, especially if they end up at a university school, what ends up happening with those funds if they end up having, if I don't have to pay towards that later in time.
Great question. And some of that only you can answer. I guess you just did answer. You're going to be in this job for a long time. You can influence whether or not they go to school in this system. Maybe you can't control, but the second part of that doesn't matter, right? So, well, it matters for the expense. From a 529 plan, you can use those funds any educational purpose. So UL system or Hawaii or Florida, wherever they end up going, the money can be allocated there. You can even use 529 money for high school, private high school. You can use 529 money for a computer or a laptop for school. And so and this is why it's the platinum standard. There's so many flexible ways to do it. If your child doesn't need, you save 20,000 into the plan, your child doesn't need it because of your job, you can transfer that 20,000 to a cousin or to someone else. Maybe you swap cars, or maybe there's some personal trade, but it's transferable. Or maybe you don't have anyone to transfer. You can cash it out. You can take the 20,000. You will pay taxes as if it were in a regular brokerage, which so you lose the benefits of that 529 because you're not using it for educational purposes. You pay taxes, and there is a 10% penalty. So part of your question gets back to how willing are you to roll the dice on paying that 10% penalty, right? And getting the number right is going to be, getting that calibrated is extremely difficult. And so maybe the answer is do the math on what a 4-year UL system tuition would cost and save, maybe try to put what the UL system would cost for you as an employee, and then put 75% into the fund or something like that, where you have cushion, but the risk of paying the fee is very low. Something like that. But it's the gold standard, the platinum. It's the best of the best as far as tax preferred vehicles we have in the US, because there's so much flexibility. Debt one that I teased 10 or 15 minutes ago, for every debt payment you have, pay extra, whether it's a mortgage, car loan, student loan, credit card. I talked about saving and paying yourself first earlier. This is an indirect way of saving. This is an indirect way of paying yourself first. Maybe you pay an extra 20 on each payment. Maybe you round up to the next $100 increment, or maybe you make a one-time non-recurring payment every other month. Any ways that you can go, any things you can do to kind of move from passively saving to actively paying off debt can only benefit you. One of our quiz questions looked at the cost of student loan. If you borrow $10,000 at 5% over 10 years, you end up paying $27.23. That equates to $106.07 per month. Make a $106 payment every month, and you'll pay it every month. 120 months, you'll pay off the 10 months. If you change that from 106 to 125, you'll save yourself about $600 in interest and pay it off in almost 2 years early. And that $19, $20 is not a big number, right? If we take that to 150, then we pay it off in closer to 5 years. So relatively small changes to our debt payments can have pretty significant benefits over the life of the loans, if you're able. And it doesn't really matter. To me, this is a form of investing. This is a form of saving. I'm reducing the interest that I owe or the interest that I pay. And in many ways, for me, that gives me kind of more control or more agency, in a sense, over my financial plan. And then finally, set goals. Sit down with your family, your kids, your spouse, your partner, identify 5 financial goals for the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years. Maybe these are very specific. I want to save $1,000 for a vacation. Maybe they're generic. I want to begin saving for retirement. Identifying the goals. That's the starting point. You don't know. It's very difficult to get to where you're going if you don't really know where you want to end up. And setting goals, financial goals, these could be simple. I want to save $20 a month. They can be complex. I want to set up a 529 for my new child, that with so many question marks about what the cost may be. If you set these goals, then we can start thinking about how to get there. So make sure you talk to the spouse, partners, everyone else. That's it for today, for June. That's everything I have prepared. A couple questions popped up in the chat. Yeah, Allison, senior ULM with TOPS academic scholarships. Oh, great. Oh, sorry, talking to each other. Sorry.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. He's making money. So
yeah, no, that's great. And getting a sense of, and you can talk to Katie about this, trying to estimate what college, the full cost of college today is for someone. There's 100 different varieties of what it costs, depending on the situation, whether it's top scholarships. But the first step is just to kind of map out what the situation is, and then you kind of figure out the options.
Right. And two, I don't know how old your daughter is, but I would then be worried about, what happens if they change TOPS? What happens if the institutional policies about dependent waivers get changed? So, it would also be nice to have a healthy 529 right now, in case he decides he wants to go to grad school, because that won't be covered by TOPS. So.
Yeah, great point. And, it's a big guessing game. Predicting the future is difficult. To me, it all starts with what are your goals? And if you start with the goals, then you can begin making kind of small steps toward it. Anything else? We're almost at our hour. We want to wrap up. I want to thank you all for attending. Thank you for the questions. In 2 weeks, we'll talk more specifically about budgeting, debt management, some hacks we can have there, some good debt versus bad debt. We'll go into real detail about education and retirement planning mid-July, and then get into some special topics. Again, any comments or questions, let me know. Let me know what you'd like to see at future sessions. If you have specific financial planning issues, let's talk and let's start building your plan.